Hello guys, and welcome back to a new video. Today is the third video of our playlist. If you did not watch the previous two ones, please go ahead and you will find it organized in the playlist in here. So before, we spoke at first about asymmetric encryption while implementing the security for your Spring Boot application. And then we spoke about web application firewalls, which is something really important, and you have to have it in your application, especially when you go to production. Now, today, we will also dive into security, but we will see the security from another perspective, not from the authentication perspective and just allowing users to access your application, but we will dive into the authorization era and we will see how important is this part. So, at first, stick around to the video and don't miss any part of it because every word is super important in this video. And just to give you a hint and just to give you a teaser before you start this video, we will talk about authorization. So let's picture a scenario together. Imagine in an application, I create a resource. So like I create, like a product or anything. And somehow, let's say another user predicts or knows the ID of the object and the resource that I created in the system. So he also can perform an update or he can delete this product using his own authentication token. So since he's authorized to access our application, he can also update or delete this resource unless we secure it correctly, unless we set an authorization system to determine who is authorized to perform which action. So as I mentioned, this is super important in today's industry. So stick around to the video and you will get all the picture and how you can implement and secure your APIs and resources to have more people trusting your system. So now, before we start, if you are new to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And also, I'm counting on you to share the knowledge as much as possible. So share this video with your friends, share it in the groups, share it on your social media, and also, most importantly, try to implement as I implement. Also, I also want to see what you will do and what you will implement. So just implement what you need to implement. Share it on LinkedIn, share it on social media and tag me there and I would be happy to see what you achieved. And also I want to see your contribution to this project and all the other projects. So I want to start a new series to review your code and review your PRs. So just go ahead, create pull requests, tag me there or send me a message or I will also get it from the GitHub notifications and I would be happy to do some code review and share the knowledge with all of you. Now, with no further ado, let's get started. Alright, so first let's start by creating the base entities that we need. So as we explained before, we will implement a to-do task application, and as I mentioned before, the focus for now is not to implement something like business advanced, but the most important is to understand and dive into the features that we will discover along the implementation of this application, like the advanced security that we will see in this video, also caching for the next videos, and deployment, the testing, and so on and so forth. So the business context is not that important. I know it might be important, but it's not the most important part. All right, so just I want to explain that before we dive deeper. So first thing, I will create a to-do class in a to-do package. So I'm going to create a to-do class. I will say don't ask again, just in order to add it. So I'll give it some annotation. So first it's going to be an entity. And of course, we will extend our base entity. All right. So I will add some getter setter annotations. So like the classic Lombok annotations, I mean. So setter, all args constructor, no args constructor, and of course the super builder, since we are extending here. So here you see that we have super builder. So any class that you want to use a builder and have access to the attributes in the parent class or classes, you need to annotate the parent class with super builder, as well as all the subclasses. They should have also the super builder annotation. All right, so now I will also add the table and I will give it a name, maybe to-dos, something like that, or like to-do or to-dos, or maybe we can call it this way, to-dos. All right, so then a to-do belongs to a category. So I will create also a category entity, and I will put it into a category package. So like we will separate them. All right, so in the same way, I will just copy paste these annotations in here, put them in the on the category level. So here, let's call it categories. So like the table names, but preferably, or like it's recommended to have them always in plural. So let's extend also our base entity. Now let's get back to our to-do and add some properties. So the first thing, a to-do will have a private string title. Also, it should have a description. And then along the description, we need a date for the to-do, like when this to-do should be done, or like when it is scheduled exactly. So I will have a private local date. So it will be just local date, not local date time. So let's just call it date maybe, or like to-do date, or like start. Let's call it, to be more precise, let's call it start date. All right. And also I will use a private local time, and I will call it start time. So for the to-dos, I will just later on, we will just calculate, or like have a method that will calculate all the to-dos, or like the gone to-dos, or like the one they are done yet. All right. So then I will add another Boolean, just as a status, let's say done or not. So just to know when the to-do is done. It might be whether done automatically when the end date, or like when the start time is done, or also when the user mentioned it as a done. Also, if you want to, maybe let's add some logic in here. So I will have an end date and an end time as well. So like for a to-do, we can say that we want to have, or like we want it to start in a specific date time, and we want it to end in a specific date time as well. So let's go ahead with this option right now. All right. And of course, a to-do belongs to a user. So we will have a relationship with our user in here, and the relationship, it's gonna be many to one. So maybe let's get rid of this fetch. Maybe we can make it fetch type eager later on if we need to, maybe like to fetch the user information, but we should have it anyways. All right, so here we can have also, or we can add our join colon. Let's call it owner ID, maybe something like that. So like we want to know who is the owner of this to do. And now let's go first of all add the relationship within the user. And of course, maybe before doing that, we have also a private category. So like a to do belongs to a category. So in the same way, it's going to be a many to one. And also let's add a join colon, and let's call it name category ID. All right, so let's call it category underscore ID. So these are the relationships that we need for our to-do entity. We can also add more information, like adding maybe details, or like subtasks and sub to-dos and so on and so forth. But for now, let's keep it simple, and we might extend it later on. So now let's go to the user and add the relationship with the to-do. So let's scroll to the bottom, maybe after the role, and in here I will have a private list of to-do. So no, not tokens, but just to-do. All right, and then let's call it to-dos. So here it's gonna be a many to one. It's gonna be a one to many relationship, and it's mapped by user. All right, so it should be mapped by user. And here, by the way, just to make sure that your mapping is correct. So as I mentioned, and as I explained in each video, that the name, or like the mapped by, this should be the same attribute name. All right, and just to make sure, you can hit Control and click on this one to navigate and see if the attribute already exists or not. But I think this feature is only available in the IntelliJ Ultimate 1. All right, so now we have the relationship within our user. So let's go and take the same, and now let's implement the category. So for the category, I will just have a private string. Let's call it name, maybe just category name, and if you want, let's also add a description. And then later on, let's also add our to do. So here it's gonna be category instead of user. So category, and let's make sure it navigates. So everything is done. All right, so now we have the relationships between our three entities: the user, the to-do, and the category. So the category, it will extend base entity, but actually I think we don't need to extend the base entity. So maybe we can take these attributes in here, because for the category, the users, they will the user or okay. So let's think about it this way. So whether we define the categories at the beginning, so like our application supports to-dos only for some categories, or we can make it open and every user can create a category. All right, so maybe let's keep it this way. So let's say that every user can create a category. All right, but in the beginning, of course, like we will initialize our application with some categories, like default ones, and then the user, he can also extend and create more categories. So now, like in this way, or like extending the base entity, we are covered, because we have the created by and the last modified by. All right, so now we are done with the implementation, or like creating the different entities. Let's also optimize the imports everywhere if needed. So also in the category, so everything looks fine. All right, so now let's move on and implement the services for the to-do and for the category entities. All right, so now I can close all these tabs, and let's start with the category. Okay, since it's simple, I guess. So I will create a class, but it's going to be an interface actually, and I'm going to call it category service. So this will be my category service. So it's going to be an interface where I will define the different methods that we need for our category. All right, so the first thing we need, let's say we want to return a string, for example. So it's going to be a string. We just want to return the ID, and let's say create category. All right, so, and then we will not need the category entity, but I will say category request. All right, so let's call it request. So we don't have these objects yet, but we will do it later on. And then I will have a void update category. All right, so let's say category update request, and let's call it request as well. All right, and also for creating a category, we need a string user ID, and the same here, let's say string user ID. So then we want a list of all the categories, including the user. So like all the categories where the ID is, where the categories were created by the user or by the system itself. All right. So it's gonna be a list, not of categories, but it's gonna be a list. Let's import it of category response. All right. So let's say category response. So find all by user, for example, or by owner, or like, so let's say just find all by owner. And here, of course, as I mentioned, we need our user ID just to know who is the user who created that one. And we need also a category response. So category response, and let's say find by ID, or find category by ID if you want to. So category by ID, and here we need the string category ID, or like let's call it cat ID just for a simple name. All right, so then I guess these are the methods that we need. Of course, like we can delete, so let's say void delete category by ID. And I guess that's it. So now let's move on and create these objects first. So here, let's create the request. So it's going to be under the category package, and we will create a sub package called requests, or like requests or requests as you want. So I will paste the getters and setters that we have in here. So I think I have them here. Let me just remove the entity, the table, and change this one to just a builder. Let me optimize the imports, and now later on we will define the attributes that we need. So just now we want to create the service and prepare all the requests. So here it's going to be also under request, and let me copy paste these annotations. So you can also use a record, by the way. So it's completely fine and completely up to you which type of object you want to use. So now let's create this one under a response package. So again, let me paste the Lombok annotations. And then we are done with the category server. So now we will move on to the implementation. But before moving to the implementation, let's just go and define what are the information that we need for our category request and category update request, and finally category response. So for the category request, in order to create a category, we need the basic, or like this, almost the same attributes that we have in here, which is like name and description. All right, so we want to set it the name and the description. So let's go back to category request in here and paste all these two annotations. Sorry, not annotation, but fields. And in here, I want to add a not blank, for example, for the name, and the same for the description. All right, so let me double check in here. So I think in the auth, just I want to check how I defined the. All right, so let's copy this one and let's get back in here and let's add this as a message. So it's gonna be validation. So I think it's missing a V, so validation, and here it's gonna be category and then name not blank. All right, so I will show you when we come to the front end part, I will show you why we need these codes and how we need them, and also of course in the next video, before even moving to the tests, let's see, or like we will see how we can implement the I18N, which is internationalization. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly right now, but anyways, so here we have the name and the description. So let's say here description. So maybe the description we can leave it empty, but okay, so it's really up to you later on, guys. So like if you want to make it like optional, just remove this annotation from here. All right, so now we have our request. So for the update request, I think or assume it's gonna be the same. So we have the same attributes, so you can even use or like reuse the same category request, but I personally prefer separating the objects. All right, so like the update objects, the creation objects, and so on and so forth. All right, so now let's go back to the category response. So here we can add the basic information, so we don't need the validation in here since it's just a response. So we have the name, the description, and also from here, or like from now, I will add also maybe something called like this. So all right, before doing that, let me go back to the category entity. All right, so let's go back to the category entity, and maybe we can add some translations to the basic categories that we have. All right, like I mean the basic categories that we have, we can also add translations, or let me leave it for the video later on. But here I just forgot to add the colon name, so let's call it just name in here, and let's say nullable false, and it should be, or it should not be unique, because like multiple users can create the same category name. All right, so let's use also colon in here, and let's say name, and let's give it a description. So it's going to be description, and let's say also nullable false. So here, as I mentioned, if you decide to remove it from the validation in here and from the category request, also you have to come back here and remove this nullable false. All right, so now we are done with the request. Let's go to the response. And so for the response, we have a name, we have description, and also if you want to, we can add an int, which is like to-dos, to-do count. All right, how many to-dos we have for this category response for that specific user. All right, so like I will explain that later on when we come to the implementation of this part. So for the update, as I mentioned, it's going to be exactly the same. So now we are done with the requests and the responses. So let's move on and implement the service, or like the implementation of our category service. All right, so now we will create the implementation, but before that, let's quickly create a repository. So let's call it category repository. So this is going to be our JPA repository. So let's extend maybe JPA repository, it's better. So let's say JPA repository with a category and a string as ID, since our ID is of type string. All right, so now let's go here and create an implementation package. So it's going to be category service implementation. So category service implementation. And now we need to implement category service. I'm going to make this one full screen. And of course, we need to annotate it with a service, and also required args constructor, and the SLF for J in case we need to add some logs. So now let's go and implement all the methods. And in here, let's first create or inject our private final repository. So now you know that when it comes to communicating with the external, with the extra world, or like with the outside world, we need to transform objects, because here we are receiving requests and we need to respond with responses. All right, so it's not the same object. So what we need to do is we need a mapper. All right, so let's create a mapper in here. So I'm gonna create a private final category mapper, and I'm gonna call it mapper or category mapper just as a full name. So for now I will just create a class, and in this class I'm gonna annotate it with the service annotation. We will come back to the methods when we need. All right, since our category request will be already validated by the controller and also by the Spring validations, so also you can make other validations, or like business validations to be precise, if you need to. But for the category, we can do some extra checks. So when we create a category, we want some, maybe, so this is something that we will not do because we don't need it, but I'm just talking maybe in the future, or like to open your mind how you can think about the business, or like how you can implement a business logic. So when creating something, you need to check that this already exists or not. So for example, we mentioned that the category, the user, or like we can create the same category multiple times, because different users, they can all name the category the same way. So for example, we have a category work. So multiple users can create different categories called work. All right, but so here the catch: the same user cannot create two categories with the same name. All right, otherwise it's going to be a duplication. So let's first of all do this check. So for that, you can whether implement all the logic in here, or you can extract it to a method for better readability and maintainability of the application. So let's create it, or like let's implement it first in here, and then we can extract it to another method. So what we need to do, so let's create a final Boolean, and let's say already exists. All right, so already exists for user, for example. So like, because this is what we want to do. So equals this dot category repository dot find by ID and user, or like created by. All right, and user ID. So let's say find by ID and user, that's it. So sorry, not find by ID, but find by name. So it should be find by name, because we need to validate that the name of the category is unique across that user, or like for that specific user. So the name, it's going to be request.getName, and it's going to be user ID. So let's go ahead and implement this method. So this method is going to return a Boolean. So this is an auto completion. I don't know why it is this way, but in here, let's use the query annotation. All right, so let's use the query annotation, and let's write our query in here. So it's going to be select, and let's say count C, or like count C is greater than 0 from category C. So this is the first part. All right, so from category, so because this count C is greater than 0, it will return this Boolean that we want in here. Okay, so that's why we need that. So now we need the where clause. So where, let's use the lower method of the name of C dot name equals, or is the same, equals my, or lower again. So let's use the lower method of the name that we will receive, or like of the parameter that we will receive, which is this one. All right, and since we have here the user ID, so C dot created by, so created by is for that user. All right, equals my user ID. So this is how I can check that the user have, or that the user has or not the same a category with the same name, because this is very important, because we might have the same category but for another user. So we need to add the check also for the same user or not. All right, so now we have this one. So let's check if already exists. Let's say throw new business exception. So let's say throw new business exception, and this business exception, it will use my error codes dot category, let's call it this way, maybe category already exists for this user, exists for user. All right, so let's go ahead and create this enum constant, and I'm gonna copy the same code in here. And also let's say category already exists for the user, and this is gonna be a conflict. So the conflict, or like the code for the conflict, is 409. All right, so because like we have a conflicting data. So now we are done with this part. So if not, so like, or now we are implementing or like treating the else case. So also now we can extract this this part of code to another method, but we will do it just later on once we are done with the implementation of this one. So now I need a final category. So an object of type category, let's call it category equals this dot category mapper, not repository, but category mapper dot to category, for example, or to entity, like call it whatever you want. From what? From the request. Okay, so let's go ahead and create this method. So it's gonna return a category. So let's return category dot builder dot build, and then we will have the name, which is request dot get name, and description name dot get description. So once we have this, so now we mapped the category, we need also to add or like to attach this category to the user. All right, so here I'm not sure whether we added the user, so we don't, but this will be automatically attached since this is the user who created the category, so it will automatically belong to him. All right, so once we have the category, all I need to do is to save the category. So I have this dot repository dot save category dot get ID. All right, so now we are done with this implementation. So as I mentioned, if you want, you can extract this one, for example, check category unicity for user or something like that, or you can also leave it in here because like the method is not too long. All right, so now we have update category. So to update a category, we need to do the same check as we have in here. All right, so when we want to update a category, so let's say that the user created a category with a name, let's say for example this name, and now he wanted to update it to work, for example. All right, so he wants to change the name from AAA to work, but the user has already something called work in here. Okay, so he needs, or like we need to check. All right, so we need to double check. Also, there is one thing in this find by name and user. So here we mentioned that the created by should be user ID, but we also mentioned that in the beginning, or like when we deploy the application, we want to add or like to have some default categories. Okay, so the default categories, they will of course need the created by. So the created by, let's assume for now it's gonna be something like app. All right, or like app ID or app or something like that. Okay, so like we might so we need to decide this for now because we need to add this check in here. Okay, so the created by, so when we check the find by name and user, the created by, it should be this user ID or c dot created by equals app, for example. All right, so equals, let's say, app. Okay, so because as I mentioned, when we initialize the categories, we might also create a category called work. All right, so the user should not create another category called work. All right, because it already exists. All right, so let's go back in here, and now it's time to extract this one. So I will extract this method, and I'm gonna call it check category name unicity, for example, or like let's say unicity, just as is, unicity by for user, for example. All right, so this is the method. I will just move it to the bottom. So I will scroll to the bottom and paste it in here. So now when we update also a category, but I will just change something in here because I don't need the get name. I just need to pass the name as a string. All right, so it's gonna be a string name, and that's it. All right, so now it's going to be request.getName in here. So now I can reuse the same method. So check category unicity and request.getName and user ID. So if another category already exists, so like we cannot update, or like we should not update that category. Otherwise we will do the same. So here, let's first try to find the category that we want to update. And for that, so we have an update request, and also we need here, it's a parameter that we forgot to add, but in here we need also our string cat ID or category ID. All right, so let's come back in here and let's add a final string cat ID. So now the first thing that we need to do before even checking the unicity, we need to make sure that the category already exists. Okay, so let's say final category, and let's say category to update equals this dot repository dot find by ID, and then instead of get, I want to do or else throw. Okay, so and I'm going to throw a new entity not found exception. So new entity not found exception, and here let's say no category found with this ID. All right, so now after doing this, checking the unicity, now all I need to do is I need to merge the category with this one. All right, with the request that I get. So I will do the following. So I will call this dot mapper dot merge category. So merge category, and I need to pass the category to update and the request, the update request. So let's create this method. So it's going to be a void because we just want to update the information in here. So there is no need to return the value because we already have it. So now it's going to be as we did before. It's going to be a simple check. So if my request dot get name, or let's use the string utils. All right, so string utils class dot is not blank of the name, and so we need to do an extra check, or let's maybe break the line, and so not this one. I don't need. Sometimes the auto completion is really annoying, but okay, let's deal with this. So if the name or the category name is not blank, I know that we have already the validation, but always keep in mind that we can use the call of this service from another service. So we always need to make sure that we have everything valid. All right, or you can also move the valid annotation directly to the service level, and this way you are sure that you validate also at the service level. So it's really up to you. So now and then, so this one, it should be request. So request, and here if my category to update, so it should be not. So if the name is not empty, so the request name is not empty, as well as the category to update name is different from this request name. So in this case, it's gonna be category to update dot set name request dot get name. All right, so let's do the same in here. And okay, so now the AI is learning. Okay, so now we updated the name and description and we are done. So we can come back in here. We have the merge, and finally we need to call this dot repository dot save our category to update, and we are done with this method as well. All right, so now the next one, we have find all by owner. So the find all by owner, we need to fetch all the categories that are created by that specific user. So it's going to be really simple, but we need to write the query ourselves. So let's say this dot repository dot find all by user ID, and then I just need to pass the user ID, and then dot stream and dot map. So dot map, let's say this dot mapper, and let's say to category response. So to category response, we don't have this one yet. And finally, we want to add the toList method. So first of all, we need to create this method, and it's gonna return, or like should return, a list of category. All right, so find all by user ID, and this one we need a query. So let's write the query in here. So it's gonna be select C from from category C. So just C, where, so here we have c.createdby is equal to the user ID that we have in here, or we need this one. All right, so as we did before, we need also the categories that were created by the system itself. Okay, so this is why we need to add this one. But here, just assuming that when we initialize the categories, the created by should be called up. All right, or we can externalize it to a variable and then pass it as another parameter, and so on and so forth. So it's really up to you. Okay, so now find all by user, it returns a list, so we can stream over it, and then we can call the map. Now we need to implement the to category response. So it's gonna return a category response object. All right, so let's now map this one. So it's gonna return category response dot builder dot build. So let's call it .build, and here maybe for the response we can also add the ID if you want to. All right, so let's add a string ID, and we have the name, description, and the total of the to do counts. All right, so let's say name and description, and let's say also like to do count. To do count. So for the to do count, it's going to be category dot get to dos dot size. All right, and for that, let's also make this one final in here, and for that we need to do something. All right, so when we come back here, let me also close all this. So when we come back here, we know when we perform this mapper. So let me close this and also this one. So when we say category.getToDos, so this will also execute a query, or like we'll try to get the to-dos for that category. So the whole method needs to be a transactional method, and we can also make it read-only because it's only a select or like a read-only query. So we are not updating anything. All right. So this method, it absolutely needs to be transactional. All right. So now let's implement find category by ID. So this one is super easy. So it's gonna be this dot repository dot find by ID, and then cat ID, and of course or else dot map first. So find by ID, and then we have map. So this dot mapper dot to category response, and it's gonna be, or it should be, a method reference, and or else let's throw no category with the ID was found. And now finally, for this delete category, I'm just keep it as a to do for now. We will implement the logic, or like I will show you how we can implement the logic later on, because as I mentioned and as I explained before, I want to show you as max features and as max skills and things that you can learn from the Spring framework as possible. So for this one, how we will do it. So first thing, mark the category for deletion. All right. So we will mark it for deletion, and then the scheduler. So we will have a scheduler should pick up all the marked categories and perform the deletion. All right, perform the deletion. So we will implement it later on. So like I'm just leaving it as a to do so we do not forget it, but we will come back and implement it. But in case I forget, just please drop a comment in the videos and I will implement this for sure. But I have it already on my list, so don't worry about that. All right, so now we have our category service which is implemented. Now we can move on and expose all these methods through a controller. Let's create now a controller. So here I'm going to create a class and I'm going to call it category controller. So this will be my controller. I'm going to make this one full screen, and this will be a REST controller and with a request mapping. So let's say request mapping, it's going to be /API/v1/categories. So, and then I will add a required args constructor, and that's it. Also, I will add the tag with a name. Let's give it category API. So for example, category API, and maybe description, category. Let's call this one maybe categories, something like that, and category API, or like category management API, as you like. I will leave it to you. All right, so here we need to inject our category service, and then of course we need to create our first method, which is going to be a post mapping, and for that we will return a response entity. So it's going to be a public response entity, and it will be of type void, for example, or like we can return the location. So we can follow the best practices and just return the location. Otherwise you can just return the string ID or like the new location of that category. Okay, so here I will just create in the comments, in here in the comments, let's call it maybe a REST response, maybe something like that, and it will have only a private string ID. All right, so also I will add the getters and setters. Let me find them, and the builder as well also if you want to. Okay, so now it's gonna be a response entity of my REST response. So I'm gonna call it REST response. And the first one, as we mentioned, maybe we can also get the name from here, create category. So let's call it create category. And for this one, it's gonna be, we will have a request body. So let's import this one, and the user ID will just adjust it in a moment. And also this one should be a valid object. And this will be my authentication, because we don't need to inject the user ID since we can get it from the token. All right, so simply we just need to have a final string, let's say maybe user ID equals, and here we will have, or like we will cast user and dot get principal, and all this one, it should be between parentheses, and then dot get ID. Let's import the user first, and then dot get ID. So this will be my user ID, and then I will have a final string cat ID equals this dot category service dot create category, and then finally I just want to return my new a response entity dot OK with a REST response. But to follow the best practices, instead of just returning OK, we can say just created, and for the created we need to return the URI. But just to make it simple, just for now, and then I will show it to you later on, I will add the dot status in here, and then dot body, and the body will be this one, and then dot build. All right, so maybe I'm missing some parentheses. So this one first, it will be HTTP status dot created. So created, and then the body, it will be this one. And here, of course, we need the new, and that's it. All right, so we will return it with a status. So also we can do a static import in here, and we are done. So for these two attributes, let's make them final as well. So now let's move to the next one, which is update category. So now let's create a put mapping. So this one, it's gonna be a put mapping, and for the put mapping, or to update, we need the category ID. So I will ask it, or like request it as a path parameter or a path variable. So let's call it category dash ID. So it's gonna be a public response entity, but this time it will be a void. And now we need, of course, our request body, and this one should be valid, and we will have our final category update request. Let's call it request, and of course we need to inject our authentication. So let's say authentication. So the first thing we will have, or like we need to extract the user ID. So we can even extract this code to a method, but it's fine also, like we can keep it this way. And of course, sorry, I forgot here to add the string category ID, and this one, it's gonna be a path variable. So a path variable, let's give it the same name, category dash ID, and let me rename this one in here, and also a small typo in here. So now everything is done. So all I need to do is to call my service dot this dot service dot update category, and I just need to return OK, or here just accept it. All right, so because when we just need to inform the user that the request has been accepted or updated or something like that. All right, so the next one, we need to return the list of category responses. So this is going to be a get mapping. So here we only need to pass the user ID, so no parameters are needed in here. So this is going to be a public response entity of type list of category response, find all by categories, and here I will inject my authentication. Let's call it authentication. And now the first thing we need is to inject our user. So this is going to be my user ID, and finally I just need to return a response entity dot OK, and then this dot service dot find all by owner, for example. And we need to pass the user ID. So now this is our get mapping. So the next one, it's going to be find category by ID. I will copy the name from here. So it's going to be also a get mapping. And then I need here to pass the category ID as a path variable. So category dash ID. And then it's going to be a response entity of type category response, find category by ID, and in here I need my path variable. So let's say category dash ID, and final string category ID, or maybe let's call it cat ID, as you want. And now all I need to do is to return this dot response entity dot OK, and then this dot category service dot find category by ID. So let me fix the typos in here. And category ID. So everything is done. Now let's also expose this delete method. So it's going to be a delete mapping, and of course we need our category ID. So it's going to be category dash ID and public response entity of type void. So here we need a path variable. So let's call it category dash ID and final string category ID. So now just we need to call our delete method and then just response entity.ok.build. So now we exposed all the methods that we have in our category service. And now we can move on to the implementation of the to-do service. And then we will come back to the best part, or which is the main goal of this video, which is the security, because I will give you, or I will tell you the problem, and then you will understand, of course, the problem and why we need to secure, or why we need to add this security layer. And afterwards I will show you how to fix that and how to implement that, and also how to improve the security of your logic. So it's business security. It's not only it's not the application security, but the business security. All right, so let me close these windows, and now let's move to the to-do. So the first thing I will create is let's start maybe with a to-do service. So to-do service, and this is going to be my interface. And now, as we did before, so it's going to be a string create to-do, and for that we will need our to-do request. So let's call it request, and of course we will need a string user ID. All right, so then we will have also let's say void update to do. So it's going to be almost the same methods, and here I will have my to do update request. So to do update request, let's call it request, and of course we need, let's not forget this, so the to do ID, and we need a string user ID. All right, so then we have maybe finding all the to-dos by category and finding all of them, and so on and so forth. So let's have a to-do response, and this one, let's call it find by ID, or find to-do by ID, and in here we need the string to-do ID. So to-do ID. Then we need also a list of to-do response. So find all, for example, find all to-dos, find all to-dos, but honestly this does not make sense. Or I think it makes sense, because first we want to have them grouped, and maybe we can have like kind of a view just to display all the to-do responses, and then like group them, or like display the category information. And so let's say find all to-dos for today. Let's add this one, and here we don't need any parameters for that. Let's add another to-do response. So find all to-dos by category. So for this one we need our string category, let's just call it with the short name cat ID. Maybe another list of to-do response, and let's say find all do to-dos, or like past to-dos, or like the to-dos in the past. And here we don't need any anything. So here we just of course need the string user ID, of course. So like we need the user ID everywhere. So it's gonna be also string user ID in here. And to find all to-dos for today, we need the user ID, and of course here we need the category and also the user ID. So we have the create, update, almost all the find methods. Finally, I think let's say avoid delete to do by ID. All right, so let's even start with this, and then if we think about other methods, we will add them. So let's first create our request. So I will create the first to do request in the request package. I will add the getters and setters, also the builder. The same for the to do update request. Let's create it in the request package as well, and let's paste the methods in here. And now let's create our to do response. So I will create it in a response package, and let's also add the annotations. All right, so now we have everything. So this one just response, and now let's go and add some attributes to this one. So as I mentioned, for the request, we will have almost the same information that we have in here. So I'm just gonna copy this one. And of course, like I will just use the time to add the column annotations. So this one's gonna be title. And of course, it's gonna be nullable false, but it cannot, or like it should not be unique, because it might be also duplicated. So we will have a colon and then name, let's say description. So this one is description and nullable false. So for this one, it will be also a colon, and let's give it a name. Let's say start date, and of course nullable false. The same in here. So let's say start end date. So here we have end date. We have also start time. So let's call this one start underscore time. It should not be nullable as well. And this one, it should be end time. And this one, let's call it maybe is done if you want to. All right, so is done, and we have the owner ID and the category ID as well. So we already copied our attributes. Let's now add them. So here we have the title. Now let's add the validation. So this one, it should be not blank. And let's say the message, it should be validation dot to do. So it should be a dot title, and then the attribute itself, the title, and then not blank, for example. All right, so like you can manage and you can do everything you want, like whatever you want, the way you want to compose your messages. Okay, so here instead of a title, it's going to be description, and in here, so it's not blank, but I'll just leave the message. But this one, it should be future, present, or future. All right, so future or present. So here, let's say start date. So start date, and then let's say future, or maybe or present. And then we will have the same for the end date. So here, let's change this one with an end date, but the end date should be only future. All right, not future, not or present, but it should be only future in the future. Wait, no, it can also be in the present, because like I can create a to do for today. All right, like the start date and the end date are the same. All right, so let's also add this one to the start time. So here let's say start time, future or present. All right, so yeah, I think future or present, but no, it does not make sense to add future or present to the start time, or like even validation for the start time and end time, because we can have, so for example, assuming that now is 10 o'clock, okay, or like let's say 12 o'clock. And then I'm creating a to-do for next week, but at 10 o'clock or 8 o'clock. So like it's before the current time, okay? But because future or present, it works on the current time, so it does not make sense to add this one in here. So like we can add a validation, maybe like a manual validation when we implement this one. All right, so we have here all this, and it's gonna be the same. I think the done, we don't need it when we create and even update. So let's go and do the same for the update request. So since we have the same information to update, so I can close category controller. And for the response, so for the to-do response, I will have the same information that I have in here. So let me just remove the validation annotations. So we will have the title, description, start date, end date, start time and time. And I will have a private Boolean done or not. And also, if you want to, we can add the category information. So this means that for one single to-do, we can also display the category if we want to display them maybe in a page, or like in a home page, like displaying the future to-dos, or like today's to-dos, and so on and so forth. So we can also benefit from having the category. So let's say we want to add a category response, and let's call it categories. And for the category response, we have everything that we have except the to-do count, because we don't need it, I guess. We don't need it for this one, but we can just ignore it when we want to display the information. All right, so now we are done with creating the service and also the DTOs and the objects that we need. So now let's move on and implement these methods in our to-do service implementation. All right, so I'm going to close all these tabs, and now I will just go in here. First, I will just create quickly a repository. So to-do repository, and let's extend our JPA repository with a to-do entity, and not to-do response, but the to-do and the string as the type. Wait, I did not say that I want to extend this one. All right, that's only the thing I need: JPA repository, to-do, and a string. All right, so also I will create the mapper. What happened? So I will create also the mapper. So I'm gonna call it to-do mapper, and this one is gonna be a service, so we can inject it, and I will implement it later on. So now in the implementation package, I will have my to-do service implementation. So service implementation, and this one I will just give it the service annotation, required args constructor. So required args constructor, and SLA4j in case we want to add some logs. And finally implement to-do service. Let's optimize the imports and implement the methods. So we have a bunch of methods to implement. All right, so the first thing, I will inject my repository and I will inject my mapper. So now let's go back to the to-do request, because we forgot something. Because in here we need to add also our private category, a private string category ID. All right, because like as we mentioned, to-do belongs to a category. So here, the first thing we want to do is to check if the category already exists or not. Okay, so I will create a method in here. So I will create a method. Let's call it a private category, like it should return a category. Get category, or like check category. Actually, I'm not very convinced with the name. So we want to check the category and return it. All right. So let's call it maybe check and return category, and return category. Okay, so like if you have a better name, just let me know and I will rename it in the next video. So I need here to inject my private final category repository as well. So here I need the user ID and the category ID. So I will just say return this dot category repository dot find by ID and user. All right, find by ID and user ID. And I need to pass the category ID and the user ID as well. And here, or else, let's say, or else throw. And here I just need to throw a new entity not found exception. So new entity not found exception. And here, let's say no category was found for that user, for example, with the ID, I don't know, like with the ID something. So here it's gonna be category ID. All right, so let's go ahead and implement this method. Let's create the method. So this one, it should return an optional. So it's gonna be an optional of category and find by user ID and category ID. So let's write the query. So we need the query annotation, and now let's write our query in here. All right, so it's gonna be select C from category C, and here where C.id equals, and then I need to pass my category ID. I'm just gonna copy paste it in here, and so here I will add an and then between parentheses C.created by equals my user ID. And of course, as we mentioned before, we need to check that also, because the user can also select a category which is created by the system or by the application itself. All right, so now we are done. Let me optimize the imports because I think I imported something wrong. Yes. All right, so now we have this check and return category. All right, so now I will have my final category equals, so category, why this completion? Let's call this check and return category request.get category ID and my user ID. All right, so now I have the category, and I also check if I have the category or not. Once I have this, I just need to do some mapping. I need to map my to-do request to my to-do response. So here I will just say final, and my to-do entity, let's call it to-do equals this dot mapper dot to to-do, for example. And I just need to pass the request. I can also pass the request and the category itself, so I can set it, or I can just say here to-do dot set category. All right, so it's up to you. All right, so now let's implement this one. So I'm going to return todo.builder.build, and here I will have the title. So it's going to be request.get title, and then description. I need also the start date. I need also the end date. I need also the start time, not start date, but start time. I need also the end time. And here, let's say done. So like the done, it's going to be not description, but done. It's going to be false by default. All right. So when we first create a to-do, so like it should not be done by default. All right. So now we map, and then we set the category, and finally and simply just return this dot repository, not category repository, but to-do repository dot save, and then to-do, and then dot get ID. Sorry, not description, but sometimes this auto completion is really annoying. Anyways, so now to update the to-do, we need to do the same. All right, so we need to do the same in here. So first we need to check if the category already exists, and also in the to-do update request, we need here a private. So we need a private string category ID as well. And once it's checked, So here the same thing, but before that we need to check that the category that the to do already exists. All right, so let's say final to do, and let's say to do to update equals this dot to do repository dot find by ID, or else throw new entity not found exception. But I just want to specify the message in here, so it's gonna be new entity not found exception, and here I'll just pass the message. So let's say to do not found with the ID to do ID. All right, so now I checked the to do that the to do exists. Also, I checked that the category exists, otherwise like I will throw an exception, or like the code will throw an exception. So now after that I just need to merge. All right, so I'm going to call this dot mapper dot merge to do. All right, and I need to pass the to do to update, so the to do to update and the request itself. So once this is merged, all I need to do is to call this dot repository dot save the to do to update. Now let's go and implement this one, or like this merge method. So here if string utils, like in the same way as we did before, and is not blank of request dot get title. So like let's do them one by one. So I think after that the AI should learn how we want to do. Okay, so and so the next check, I want to check that the to do to update dot get title, what? So the to do to update dot get title is equals, and here should be not. Okay, so once this is correct, I need to do the following. So now it's going to follow along, and here I need to check for the dates, because for the to do we have the title description. We need now to check the date, start date and start time and time. So here if you want to, the dates we can keep it free, so like the user can freely update the start date and end date, because it's going to be validated anyways, but we just want to check for the title and the description. All right, so let's keep it simple, let's not overcomplicate it. All right, so after merging the to do, because he might also change the category, so here we need to do to update dot set category. All right, and now we are done. So now the next method is find a to do by ID. So this one is so simple. So it's gonna be this dot to do repository dot find by ID, and here I have my to do ID, and then dot map. Why it's find by? It's just I want the find by ID. So it's gonna be this dot mapper, and then to do response, let's say. And finally, or else throw a new entity not found exception as usual. So new entity not found exception, and let's say, for example, no to do found with ID, let's say plus to do ID. All right, let's implement the to do response to do response. So this is going to be a to do response object. And let's also rename this method, so it should be response. All right, so return to do response dot builder dot build. So now for the response also, I think we want to add the ID, so let's just call it ID. All right, so now let's say ID, it's gonna be what is this? I don't need this annotation. So it's gonna be my to do dot get ID, and I have title. So the title, it's gonna be my to do dot get title, and I have the description, to do dot get description, and I have the start date. So it's gonna be to do dot get start date, and date to do as well dot get end date, start dot start time, to do dot get start time, and I have end time, which is to do dot get end time, and finally dot done, so not false but to do dot is done, And finally, I want to add the category information. All right. So the category information. So here I can whether inject my my mapper, or like category response mapper, or I can just simply create it because like it's just a simple one. All right. So it's gonna be category response dot builder dot build, and here it's gonna be we will have the name, which is the todo.getCategory.getName, and we have description, which is todo.getCategory.description. All right, so now I'm just formatting the code and we are done with this one, and let's make this attribute final. And now when we come back here, we are done. All right, so this one, it's gonna be super easy. So now all I need to do is to find, just return this dot todo repository dot find all by user ID. So maybe let me write the names better. So find all by find all by user ID, and here I just need to pass the user ID, and then dot stream dot map, and then this dot mapper, and then to do response, and finally to list. All right, so now I just need to implement this method. So this is gonna return a list of to do, and if we say this one, so this is gonna work because for the to do we already have the user, so we can just use the method name as a method. So here let's change this one, find all by user ID. All right, so the next one, it's gonna be almost the same. So I'm just going to copy paste this one, and here it's gonna be find all by user ID and category ID. All right, so let's create this method, and it's gonna be also a list of to do, find all by user ID and category ID. So here I need also string category ID, and I'm done with that. So here it's gonna be cat ID. So like we have user ID is the first, so it should be the first parameter, category ID the second, so it should be the second parameters. Now we have the next method, which is find all due to do's. So this one I will just copy paste the same method, and here let's say find all due to do's, and let's create the method. All right, so this is gonna be return a to do or list of to do's, and of course I need my query. So let's create the query in here. So it's gonna be select t from to do t, and here simply I will just say where t dot end date is greater or equal, let's say current date. All right, so like if you want only to rely on the date, and we can also rely on the time. So here we can also add and at t dot end time is greater or equal current time. So we have also a parameter called current time, so we can also use it. All right, so let me make this one an uppercase, so we know that it's something belongs to Spring Data JPA, or like to Hibernate query language. So or like JPQL if you want to call it this way as well. So now we have the find all due to do's, and finally we have the delete by ID. So the delete by ID, I know that many of you might say, why not checking that the to do exists first by ID and then deleted? So I would say this is correct, but it's not necessary, because when we try to delete something that does not exist, it doesn't harm if we try to delete something that does not exist. So like 0 rows will be deleted if it exists, so it will be also deleted. All right, so let's say this dot to do repository and delete by ID. So now we implemented all the services, we just need to expose them through a controller, and then we will move to the next part. So like stick to the video, don't move away. So because now we will implement the best part and the goal of our today's video. So I'm closing all these tabs, and now I will create a to do controller. So to do controller, and I will just copy the name because sometimes I feel so lazy. Not the name, but just these annotations, and I'm gonna make this one full screen, and that's it. So here let's call this one to do's, And here also let's call this as to-dos, and here to-do API. All right, so now let's inject our to-do service. So private final to-do service, and let's go and start exposing the methods one by one. So this one, it's gonna be a post mapping, and then we need a public response entity of our REST response, and let's say create to do. So for this one we need a request body, and we want a valid one, and this is gonna be a final to do request, not response but request. Let's call it request. And we need, of course, our final authentication and authentication. All right, so oops, okay, let's format this one. And the first thing, we need our final string user ID. So it's not authentication.getName, but we can also cast our user object to authentication.getPrincipal.getID. And then let's have a final string, let's call it to do ID. And finally, we just need to return our response entity dot status, and let's say http status dot created, and then dot body. So this, let's call it, or let's use this identifier or this keyword. Let's also import this one statically. All right, so this is the first method. The next one, so update to do. So this will be a put mapping, and for the put mapping we need, of course, our to do ID. So let's call it to do dash ID, and this is gonna be a public response entity of type void. So void, and we have update to do. And we need, of course, our request body, and we want it valid, and we have final response, final to do update request. Let's call it request, and we need final authentication. All right, so let's now implement this one, and then we need to call this dot service or to do service dot update to do, and we need to pass the request and the user ID. So for the to do, yeah, we need the to do ID, of course, and because we did not ask for it here, so let's add a path variable, and this one, let's call it to do dash ID. And here we need to pass the to do ID as well as a parameter, and let's make this one final. And finally, we just need to return OK, or let's say just accept it as we did before. All right, so next one, find to do by ID. So it's gonna be a get mapping. So get mapping, and then we need also our path variable as to do ID. All right. Okay, so it's gonna be a public public response entity of to do response. So to do response. And let's call this one find to do by ID. And here we need our path variable, and let's call it to do ID, to do dash ID, and final string to do ID. And I guess for this one we need also okay, we don't need the user, so there is no need to inject the authentication in here. So let's just return this dot service dot find to do by ID. Let's move to the next one, which is find all to-dos for today. I would like to check the implementation of this one. So find to-dos for today, I guess for this one. All right, I was sure that we forgot something. So it's find all by user ID, but other than that, we want to find all the users, like all the to-dos for that user, but for today, because the method says that we want to find all the users, all the to-dos for today. All right, so let's come back in here. So it's gonna be simple. So find T from to do T, and in here it's gonna be where t.user.id equals first my user ID. So this is the first part, and to do, or like t.startDate equals current date. All right, so like this is how we can get the list of to-dos for today. Okay, so now we just fixed that because we forgot to do it, and let's copy again this name from here, and let's come back and add a get mapping. And for this one I will just add today as a suffix, so it's gonna be a list of to-do response. So let's import the list like the utils, and then simply we just need to return a response entity .ok of this .service .find all to-dos for today, and that's it. All right, so for this one we need the user ID, of course. So let's inject our final authentication, and let's say final string user ID, and let's pass this user ID as a parameter. All right, let's move to the next one. So it's gonna be a get mapping as well, so I can duplicate this one. So, and here it's gonna be category, so like all the to-dos by category where the category ID, so category dash ID, and let's change the name. And for this one, as we mentioned, we need the user ID and the category ID. So we have the authentication, and let's also add our path variable. So it's gonna be, as I mentioned, category dash ID, and let's call it final string category ID. And this one, it's gonna be this, and first we need category ID and user ID. Let's check the order, so cat ID and user ID. All right, so we are done also with this one, and then find all do to-dos. So I think we can duplicate this one and move it to the bottom. Again, I think I'm moving in the wrong way. So just to make it easy, I will just do a copy paste. So, all right, and let's call it do. And now let's also just use this method name, and here also find all do to-dos. All right, and finally we have our delete mapping. So at delete mapping, and here we need our to-do, or like a to-do ID. So to-do ID and public response entity of to-do, and here we have a path variable, and let's call it to-do ID, and it's gonna be final string to-do ID, and simply let's say just to-do delete to-do and respond with a response entity .ok. So we exposed everything. So the first thing that we need to do next, start our application, make sure that everything we implemented so far works perfectly fine, and we need to see at least that we have these endpoints exposed via our Swagger UI. So let's go ahead and do that, and then we will come back, as I mentioned, to the most important part and the goal of today's video, which is adding an extra security layer. So as always, don't move away, stick to the video, and let's move to the next part. All right, so now we just need to start our application, but first I would like to check what was the DDL we set for the project. So it's update, so it's going to update and create the new tables. And also in here, let me add the data source. I think it was gone somehow. So localhost, and here I have username and password. Let's test the connection. Okay, succeeded. Okay, and now let's select the schema. I think we called it Spring App DB. I hope I'm right. So let's also select the public schema, and here we should see the roles, user roles. All right, so let's close everything and just click on start the application and see if our implementation is not broken somehow or somewhere. So if everything goes fine, the application will start correctly. All right, so the application started and it's available on the same port as defined in the last time. So now let's open the browser, and I would just search for Swagger, and now we have our Swagger. So here we have our authentication, we have the to-dos, and we have the category API. All right, so this is the auth to-dos, categories, users, and we have here the schemas and everything. So for now, everything seems to be working fine. All right, so maybe let's say that I would like to create a category just for testing, and here I'm not authenticated, by the way. So if I click on try it out, and let's say work as a category, and here let's say work again as a category, and click on execute, so we are not authorized to perform this action. So we'll just come back in here, check if I have already users in my table. So yeah, I have one. And what was the email that I used? So let me find the email. So it was this one. So the password, I think it's just password. So let's try to authenticate and at least create one category. So authentication, and here I have login. Try it out, and okay, it's already there. So maybe let me just change password just to see. Okay, bad credentials. So I think it was just generated with this one. Execute. Okay, so that's bad. Anyways, so what I will do, I will just delete this user. So I will come here, delete this one manually, and then I will just delete this user and recreate it again with the same credentials. All right. So I know like it's a manual work, but it's completely fine. So let's register this user. Try, and here we have the password, so like we can keep this one, and let's say execute, and the user was created. All right, so now let's do a login with the same credentials, and this should work. So now we have the token. Let's copy the access token, and let's authorize ourselves. Authorize, and now I can create a to-do, or let's start with a category. All right, so try it out. Let's say work, work, it's fine. So now when I click create, so the category was created, and here I have the ID. Also, we can check the database. So let's refresh here, and the categories, I see that the newly created category is this one. So now I will do something else, and here we'll introduce the problem and the goal of this video. So I will go and create or register a new user. So I will click on try it out, and here let's say maybe John, for example, and here maybe let's say John Doe or something like that. So just you can pick the name you want, and let's say change also the phone number. So let's change the last 2 digits, and let's click on execute. All right, so now we have our user. Also, we can make sure in the database that we have 2 users. So that's perfectly correct. And now let's log in with the second one, or like the newly created user, which is John. All right. And now I will click on execute and authenticate with that user. So to authenticate, I just need to pass the token for that one. So authorize, I'm going to log out, and now I'm going to log in with that user. So here, just let me show you something. Let me find the name and put it just next to the ID. So we have the Ali, the one who created the first category. So he created by, so let me make it a bit visible. So we have here created by this user. So like the user that ends with 2E7, which is Ali, which is me, right? Now I'm connected with the user John. All right, so I want to update a category that belongs to me, or like belongs to Ali. All right, so now let's move on and try this out. So if I go to category and I want to update this category, let's try it out. So here, let's say work 2, for example, and let's say work 2. Okay, let's grab the category ID, which is this one. So I'm going to copy paste it. So here I have the ID. So now in an ideal world, when I try to execute this method, I should not be authorized to perform it because this category ID does not belong to me. So this is the extra layer that we are talking about. So when user tries to perform an action that he's not authorized to do it, he should be blocked. But in the current implementation that we have, the user should be able to do it. All right, so let's click on execute, and here we see that we have 202. So when I go back to my database, refresh this one, So we see first like the last modified by is now the user John. All right, so like the John is the user ending by 977. So normally, so the update was fine, right? Because the request is legitimate. So like the data are fine, everything is fine. So like we don't have any validation issues, but we have authorization issues. All right, so like it's not authenticated because the user is already authenticated, but we have an authorization issue. Assuming like, or imagining like this scenario, for example, let's say that some actions are only allowed for admins or like managers and not normal users. All right, but what we have in here, what we have right now is a user. Any user can update any other user's information, which is not okay, which should not be allowed. All right, so this is what we need to fix next. All right, so I hope that you clearly get the problem. So now we need to fix this problem because, as I mentioned, the application works perfectly fine. But when it comes to the business logic of our application, this is not allowed. The user should not update or should not perform an action on a resource that it's not his own resource. All right, he is not the owner of that resource, so he should not be able to perform that action. So now let me show you how we can fix that. All right, so I'm stopping the application first. I'm closing everything. I just want to remind you something. So when we go to the security package and the security config, all right, so here you remember that we have enable method security. And this enable method security, it has a pre-post enabled by default. All right, so like you don't need to enable it again. All right, so this means that I can use the pre-authorized method, post-authorized, pre-filter, and post-filter methods because it's automatically enabled or like by default enabled. So this is something that you need to check if you are not following maybe this video, or like you're watching this video for the first time and you might ask, or like when you implement it, you get something, you get an error that it's not working. Well, you won't get an error, but it will not work at all. So you need to make sure that you have this enable method security annotation on your security config class. All right, so let's close this one. And now let's go back. Let's start with the category. Okay, so for the category, as we mentioned, so here, when we try to update a category, okay, so we will use the pre-authorized method. And for this one, we need to pass a parameter. So like we need to do an extra check. So what we know, or like maybe what I showed before in previous videos, so we can use, for example, has any role, has authority, has permission, has something like that. So what we want to do is to use something that we want to make sure that the user has the permission to perform this action, right? So when we pass that, or like when we do that, what we need to check, we want to check that the user is the owner of this category that he wants to update. All right, so for that I will keep this one empty for now and we will come back to it in a few moments to finalize it. So here under category I will create a security package, and here I will create a category, so a category security service. So security service. All right, so this is going to be a classic service. So like I will add the service annotation, also the required args constructor, and maybe SLF4J when we talk about logging. So here I will inject my category repository. And now when we want to update a category, so the owner, the connected user should be the owner of the category, right? So I will create a method. So it's going to be a public boolean, and I'm going to call it is category owner. All right, so is category owner, and I need just to pass a final string. So it's going to be final string category ID. So so this method needs to be transactional. All right, so it must be transactional. And also I can make it read only because we are not updating, we are just reading. So the first thing that I need to do is to get the authentication. All right, so I need to get the authentication. So final authentication. So it's going to be security context holder dot get context dot get authentication. I'm going to break this one. So maybe let me move it here so you can follow up. All right, so now I have the authentication, and then I will have my string user ID equals, and as we did before, so I will cast it to a user. So it's gonna be user and authentication.getPrincipal.getID. Then I will have a final category. So let me import this one. So it's gonna be category, and category this dot category repository dot find by ID, and here I can say or else throw, for example, if the category is not found. All right, so once I get the category, so now I will perform the check. All right, so I need to return whether the category dot get created by equals my user ID. All right, so if the created by attribute in the category object is the same as the authenticated user, this means that he is the owner. Otherwise, he's not the owner of this category. Now, how we can use this category service in this pre-authorized method. So how to use it? Just this at, like the at symbol, and then we use category service security service. So like with a lowercase here, it should not be an uppercase as per the class name, but it should be the lowercase. And here we have, or like we can access the is category owner. And now how we can pass this category ID as a parameter. So we will pass it this way. So like it will be hashtag and then category ID. All right, so we have category ID. So in this way, so like this one, it points exactly here. And now before executing this update method, we will first perform this check. We will first execute this category owner. All right. So now we might also talk about performance, and like when we have like so many requests, so what we can do also, like we can cache the user IDs like for each category, because like we know that the created by will never change, so we can also cache them. So like this way we can also solve the performance issue. All right, so I'm also trying to foresee your questions, so I'm trying to answer them as well. So I'm going to copy paste this one. So find all categories. So here we have finding all the categories, which is, I think it's already fine, because here we only get the categories for that owner. And here we have find category by ID. So find category by ID, also it should be protected. So the user should only query or fetch his own categories. All right, he should not be able to fetch other people categories, and the same for the delete category. So now let's go and just try to check, try to execute this one. So I think the token is still valid. And now I will just bring back manually the name and the description of the category, just to make sure that it works fine. And also the last modified by, I will just delete, well, not delete this one, but set it as null. All right, I will save this. And now let's go to the browser, and all I need to do is to re-execute this update. All right, all I need to do is to re-execute this update, and now I should get an unauthorized or like something else. So let's go and check the exception. Maybe it did not work at all. So here we see that we have access denied. All right, so we have an access denied in here. So here we can also even throw before that. So like we can throw an exception, or we can catch an authorization denied exception. All right. So let's go to our handler and return a proper error message. So we go to the application exception handler, and let's pick an easy one. For example, let's add it to the end. So I'm going to duplicate this one, replace this and replace this. Let's import the exception. And in here, so it's going to be, so it should not be not found, but it should be a bad request. Sorry, not a bad request, but unauthorized. So maybe let me check if we have something else. So forbidden, I think forbidden should be better, since the user is forbidden or like not. Okay, so I think not authorized is much better. So forbidden maybe because he does not have access, but let's keep it this way. Also, like you can suggest me a different status. So Now for the error response, let's say maybe for the code, let's keep it empty. And for the message, let's say, for example, you are not authorized, or like you can also create a constant for that. So you are not authorized to perform this operation. Okay, just that's it. Maybe you can add some extra details to the message, but this should be perfectly fine. So now if I restart the application, now first of all we will not see the exception happening or like being thrown in the console, but we will see it like we will see a proper response. So let's try to execute again. Now we get a proper message. So you are not authorized to perform this operation. So the user is not allowed to update someone else's category. So maybe I will also copy this one, and let's try out the get by ID. So let's click on try it out, execute, and with the same we should see the same error message in here. So now, like the other case, if I authenticate again or like log in again with the user, or like with the user called Ali, the one who created that that category. So now okay, I need to copy let's execute. I need to copy the token and authenticate with this user. So authorize, log out, and let's paste the new token and authorize again. So now if I do get by ID, I should get the response. All right, so like now I have the, well, I think we did not map the ID, so let's go and fix it. And now we have the name and description of that ID. But let me check, because I think in the database work 1 and 2, wait, something is wrong, I guess. All right, so I will bring this back to work 1, and okay, because I think I pressed the escape button before before saving the changes. All right, but I will double check. So now if I execute again, we have work. Okay, so again I will authenticate with John. So let's say John, and execute, because I saw like wrong data being populated or like being returned. So I just want to make sure that our implementation works fine. So now if I go here and say put again, and if I do execute, so we see that we are not authorized. And also let's check in the database that the data should not be changed. All right, so like now we are safe. I think it was just a quick manipulation from my side. All right, so now we finished this part. Let's go now and secure our to-do controller. So for the to-do controller, we will do the same. So like we will implement a security service, and for that also we will secure it. So for the create, it should be fine, but for updating, finding to-do by ID, and so on and so forth, it should be also secure. So let's go in here, and let's create a security package, and let's call it to-do security service, as we did for the to-do. So make it full screen, and here it's going to be a service, and also required args constructor and SLA4j in case. All right, so now let's inject our to-do repository, because this is what we need. And here it's going to be a public boolean, and here is to-do owner, not category, but is to-do owner. And we need here a final string to-do ID. So here you can pass any information that you need. All right, so let's first get the authentication. So final authentication, we get our authentication. Let me break this line in here, and then final string user ID equals our user, and then authentication.getPrincipal.getID. And then finally we need final to do, let's call it to do, and equals find by ID, or else, let's say, or else throw instead, because if it does not exist, it's better to throw an exception and catch it and say that we don't have, like, this ID does not exist. All right, so here let's say new entity not found exception. So, and here let's say no to do is not found with ID. All right, so once we get the to do, so here we just need to return to do dot what? No, I just need this to do dot get owner. wait, for the to do, what do we have? We have get user. We called it user. So let's say get user dot get ID equals this user ID. All right. So like this will also secure our our to do. So let's go back to the to do controller, and as I mentioned, for the update, I think I still have it in here. So this one, it will not be category, but it will be to do service, security service, and here is to do owner, and here we need to pass the to do ID. We called it in here, and I will copy paste it in here. So we have update to do, we have find to do by ID. This one is also, we need to secure it. So find all to do's by user ID. So this one is fine, since as we implemented it, it will only get the to do's for that connected user. And find all to do's by category, which is fine, but also here you can add the category. So he needs to pass a category that he owns, all right, not someone else's category. So here we need also to add, let me paste the other one. So here he should be, or like the connected user should be the category owner, all right. So like we need also to secure this one. And get all due to do's, this one is also fine, since here we are filtering by the user ID, so it's completely okay. And now we need also to secure with this one. So there is something I would like to tell you about it, or like mention it, because you might ask the question. So here, assuming that that I don't have the ID as a parameter, should I always pass it as a parameter to be able to use it in here? The answer is no. So I'll just give you an example, but we will not keep it in here. So here, for example, if I have my request, all right, and let's say I want to access the title or category ID or something like so. So I think also, yeah, I think we have a good example in here. So we can also secure this one. So the user, when he needs to create a to-do, he cannot use someone else's category. He needs to use his own category, but the category is already in this to-do request. All right. So how to access this one? It's quite simple. So it's going to be request and then dot category ID, and that's it. So like there is no magic, or like there is no complication behind that. You can just access any object that you have here as a parameter, and then dot you can access after that with the methods or like the attributes. So like it's always better to keep it simple. Don't over engineer and don't over complicate things. All right. So with that, I guess we covered everything we need for today's video, if I'm not wrong. So let's move on to what needs to be done next. Alright guys, so that was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope as always you learned from it. So first of all, I'm counting on you, as I mentioned in the introduction of this video. Please share this video and help this channel grow, and mainly help people learn more and more. So like sharing is caring, so please go ahead and share the video. Also, if you are not subscribed to this channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join me and enjoy the weekly videos that I'm publishing, so we can all learn together. And don't forget to drop a comment if you want to learn something new or like another topic, so I will be happy to introduce it to you and to teach you the topic that you would like to learn. Thank you so much, and see you in the next one.